Hey everyone, we're here for this week's Facebook Live with Mubarak Law. I'm Naif Mubarak. We were going to wait a few minutes or seconds to get started. We have a very special guest, I think an important guest, and I hope that you all take the time to hear her expertise on some financial advice and how to budget and how to attack debt. But before we get started, we're going to go ahead and do what we normally do. As somebody taught me, always start the day or the meeting with some good news. So today's good news for Mubarak Law is we've had two clients, one from Syria and one from Cameroon, who have become U.S. citizens the same day of their oath ceremonies. So that was some really exciting for them. They've been waiting a long time, plus the pandemic has kind of delayed their cases further. So I was really happy to be there with them and that they became citizens the same day of their interview. Some quick updates for you all. The immigration courts for non-detained individuals is still closed and has now been closed until August 28th. We talked last week in depth on our Facebook Live about the increase in fees that are coming with USCIS applications. Remember, if you're eligible for citizenship, now is the time to apply. The fees are going up over $500 on October 2nd. Moreover, there's additional fees coming with work permits. So really, with immigration law changing as rapidly as it constantly does, these are one of the things you want to make sure that you have in order for you. So those are some other things. And really quick, today is my dad's birthday. Happy birthday, Baba. I love you. Akbal Mitsana, inshallah. I will see you guys in a little bit and can't wait to eat some kanafa and enjoy your company. So for everybody, if you know my father, to know him is to love him. Wish him a happy birthday. And he's 69 years young today. So we have a very special guest. She is actually Mubarak Law's business consultant. She's a CPA, basically grew up in Orlando, Florida, and she specializes in helping people with their finances and helping small business, especially grow the right way and to make sure that they have a plan in place and how to kind of plan for rainy days, because as you know, those are all too common. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Karen Vergara, my good friend. Hey, Karen.
Welcome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nayef, for having me here. It's truly a joy, and I can't believe we waited this long to actually do one of these.
And I can't believe you've probably been telling me for a few years now to be doing more of these Facebook Lives. And thanks to the pandemic, I guess, and not you, I'll give the pandemic credit that we've started these Facebook Lives. So, Karen, I know you have a lot of important information, and for many of our viewers who are going through difficult times right now, I'm hoping that you will have some pieces of advice for everybody. So first of all, before we do get started, we have a couple of comments. I want to thank Matt for tuning in. And also we have Oscar Chef Ivan from Dominican Republic. Hope you're doing well. There is also my brother. Here he is with Splash Bistro. And then Oscar saying hello. And here we are with my dad, the birthday boy.
Happy birthday to him. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And then we have a comment here from Steve about Syrian refugees. Today's Facebook Live, we are going to focus on financial advice, but please keep your questions for one of our immigration segments. You could always email me or you can email Jessica at Mubarak Law. I'll just put this here. Next week, we are doing our third Thursday of the month questions in Arabic, so feel free to reach out to us there. Jorge, no, thank you for joining us. And yes, thank you, Karen. Let me get back to my esteemed colleague. Karen, tell me, where did you go to school and how did you come into the world of finance and being a CPA?
Yes, so I was born in Bogota, Colombia. So for anyone, if anyone is Colombian or of Hispanic descent, hola a todos. And my family, my parents really wanted a better future for my sister and I. And we moved here to Orlando back in 2001 and just started from the bottom. I remember that we moved into a two-bedroom apartment and we had just trash bags, and that's where we had our stuff, and that's kind of how we started. And I went to school here. I graduated from the University of Central Florida. And actually been really good with money all my life, and not to brag, it was just something that I was always very interested in. And when I was 17 and I was in high school, I actually realized I wanted to be a CPA. So I kind of took this path of finance very early on. But then as time went on, I realized that not a lot of people understand finances, and finances are a stressful topic. And I thought it doesn't have to be that way. I graduated debt free. Again, I just shared my story. I was an immigrant. I graduated with just by doing the right decisions. I was able to graduate debt free. And then I met my dear husband, who I know is joining us on this Facebook Live, and I have his permission to say that he wasn't really good with money. And back, I was doing just CPA work, and then realized, wow, there is a need for people to understand how to manage their finances. And so he was in debt. I had a lot of debt. And so when we got married, we worked together to get rid of $60,000 of debt in
Wow,
18 months.
that's
And
incredible.
yeah, and it was really just because we knew the power of getting rid of debt and building wealth. And it doesn't matter how little you have, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can handle your money, you can actually manage your finances. It just takes some steps for you to actually do that.
All right, great. So you then have always loved money, and you've always been really good with handling it. And I know that I can attest to your work with my office. And I know that my team members and our employees love you. For those who don't know or who are just joining us, Karen is a CPA and financial advisor with Allgen Health. She's also the Mubarak Law, business consultant, where we set budgets and decide what we're going to spend on marketing or payroll or rainy day funds. So with the pandemic, we were prepared for these rainy days that were coming, and that's truly thanks to Karen's guidance. So Karen, from bottom of my heart, thank you. And I think I probably deserve a couple free months with that plug. So,
Well, but it was also, you listened to the advice, and that's important too, because we can give you the advice, but if you don't
yeah.
actually follow through and you implement it, then it's so it was teamwork.
Okay, so now what is your, like today? I know you mentioned you have 3 basic steps or tips for people. What would you say is? Do you want to go through that now, or we can start with small businesses? Where do you want to start?
Well, really, as a matter of fact, these 3 things that we're going to talk about apply for both your personal and your business. So if you have a business, I want you to know that the reason why most people have businesses is because they want to have financial freedom, right? Otherwise, then why are you even in business for? The responsibility is a lot, the liabilities are huge, the stress level is a lot. If you're not in business to actually have financial freedom, then maybe we need to have another conversation. But most people have a business because they're trying to have financial freedom for their own personal lives and to make their families' lives better. So these 3 tips that I'm going to talk about apply to both your personal and your business side. So so we can go ahead and kind of get started with the first one, which is you need to know where you stand financially today. Okay. And sometimes it might be scary, right? We don't know. If we talk about, the way that most people, if I said to any of the viewers today, do you know what your credit score is? Everyone's going to be like, or at least 80% of them, they're going to say, of course I know what my credit score is. And they'll tell me it's 700, it's 600, it's 550. But to me, that's not really a good measure of your financial health. That just tells me how well you know how to manage other people's money, how well you know how to manage debt. It does not tell me what your wealth is. So we got to start there. we got to start figuring out where you are today. And by doing, how we do that is we basically take all of our assets, basically all the things that we own. So that includes your home, your business, your cars, your accounts, your investment accounts, your checking account. We take all of your assets, and then we're going to subtract all of our liabilities, the things that we owe. So that includes credit cards, car loans, student loans, mortgage, any debt. Okay. And that's going to give us your net worth. So we got to start with that step. Your net worth, that does not mean your self-worth. It could be negative. It could be very low. It's okay. But we need to know where we are today so we can figure out where we're going tomorrow. And so once we figure that number, what we want is that number to grow consistently. And the only way to do that is by tracking it and by decreasing those liabilities, which is kind of going into even our third step. But for now, if you can just do that, just list all the things that you own minus all the things that you owe. That is going to calculate your net worth. And that's the number that is going to give you financial freedom, which financial freedom is that moment in time where you no longer have to work if you don't want to. You can work if you love it. You can work if you really enjoy it, but you don't work for a paycheck anymore. You work because you really enjoy it. You're actually using your net worth to live and sustain your lifestyle.
And I just want to chime in. I think on this first step, you mentioned earlier, people don't want to talk about finances. And I think calculating that net worth is what truly stresses people out, right? Where you take, okay, this is what I have, this is what I owe, this is how much I'm spending a month. Nobody wants to have that honest conversation with themselves and see where it's going. I am one of those people, right? You don't want to have these conversations and you don't want to review it. And for those who don't know how to properly track, you might be paying attention to the wrong number and not the important number. So I think that's a really good, important piece of advice for that, where to start with. Like, where am I? Like, how healthy is our financial situation, and where are we looking?
Yeah, and if you are scared about it, it's okay to be scared, but also don't let that paralyze you. Just take one step at a time. So if one day you say, today I'm going to just look at all the things I own, and then the next day I'm going to look at all the things I owe, but don't get scared of it, because at the end of the day, I want to share a statistic with you guys. 80% of millionaires are actually self-made. So they did not inherit their wealth. They created their wealth. Creating wealth is not a haphazard kind of event. We have to work at it. We have to take steps towards it. But the good news is that, especially in this country, we have the ability to build wealth. And the way to do that is by just taking the first step, which is knowing where you are today.
All right, so there it is again for those who might have missed it and you need to see it and you're a visual learner. You need to know where you are financially, step one. And I guess what comes after step one, Karen?
So step number 2 is we need to have a plan for spending. Rather than doing the whole idea of actually going and looking at our expenses and looking at the end of the month to see what's left over, what you want to do is you want to have a plan before the beginning of the month. So the way you do that is you calculate what your income, your take-home pay is, and then you're going to list out in categories by categories all of your expenses. You're looking at your spending, doing a spending plan. I don't call it budget. Budget is a bad word in our vocabulary. We look at a spending plan, which is telling your dollars where they're going to go before the month even begins. Rather than having money controlling you, seeing if there's money left over, what you're going to do is you're going to do the opposite. You're going to have a proactive approach where you look at your spending before the beginning of the month. And this applies to your personal and your business. I know Nayef and I, we look at his budget for the year. We look at the budget for the month and say, can you afford to hire another person? Can you afford to do this? Can you afford to do that? Same thing in the personal side. Can you afford to go on a trip? You may not be able to. So the way you do that is by doing it before the month begins, and then you kind of track it throughout the month.
Karen, so I know you have your steps, but I have a question, and I think what do you say to those people who are making a plan for spending, but they don't have enough money to make ends meet? Like,
Mm.
it's easy to make a plan, it's easy to make a budget when there's an excess of money. What about the people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck or to put food on the table? I know it's a very general question, but what is somebody in that situation where it's tight? What is something small, maybe on their scale, that can be done in the meantime to kind of plan for their future and to kind of slowly get out of, a tough cycle? And then that's just the sad reality for so many people, where, we don't have a living wage, or it's just they have children. Or where does it come into play when you trying to survive over budgeting?
That's right. Well, again, it goes back to just having some type of spending plan is really going to just really help you, because then you're going to know how much you need to kind of make up. Because what happens is that if you are not bringing in enough income to sustain your lifestyle, to pay for the bills, what's happening is that then you're using credit to kind of offset that gap between what you're bringing in and what's left over, right? So what you want to do is not, that's kind of, and then goes into the cycle of debt. And then you're almost like feeling like I just get into more and more debt. So the first thing you want to do is you want to do the spending plan. And if there is this thing called a net loss, right? If you just don't make enough to sustain your lifestyle, you want to look over all of your categories and see, are there areas where I can cut back? So kind of look at the needs versus wants. There are things that we need. We need housing, we need food on the table, we need utilities. There are basic things that we certainly need. But many a times there are things that we want. So clothing might be one of those things, or eating out, or trips. So what you want to do is just ensure that that your categories are well spread out. And if there's still, after you do that step, there's still a gap, you definitely need to then increase your income. And so it might be going back to your boss, or going back to determining, is there room for negotiation on your salary? Or can you do one of these, side hustles now with Uber, with DoorDash? You can maybe figure out a way where you're at least not getting into more debt. And I'm going to get into the part of how do we get rid of debt. That's the third step. But at the least, we want to make sure that you are kind of what we call break even, that there's enough money coming in so that you can sustain your lifestyle without getting into more debt.
Now, again, I don't want to get stuck here, but here we are. We're talking about people reevaluating what's actually a necessity versus what's maybe a luxury, or sometimes. And I think we see a lot of times in people who are struggling financially and they're working two jobs, maybe 2.5-time jobs, but because they're working two jobs, they don't plan their meals ahead, and then they're spending X amount of dollars eating out. And I think sometimes you might justify, well, I don't have time to get some extra food. But when you start to realize that every meal is out, that's probably a couple $100s a month people can find there. So, I think sometimes you need to have an outsider looking in to say, hey, that's the easiest way to kind of identify what's something you're missing or overlooking when you can't figure out where your money goes. So being that said, I do want to just put Karen's information here. This is her email and also her social media on Instagram. If you have any direct questions for her, or want to set up a meeting, or you have a small business, I know that she works, really well with small businesses, especially startups who are just starting, and addressing what are your needs and what are your goals. So let's find out what the magic and secret to success is here about getting rid of debt. And so what do we do here, Karen? Like, this is a society and a culture that's built around debt. Your house rich, everything's on payment, everything is financed. It's more about the interest rate and less about what's in the bank, So what do you say to our viewers about getting rid of debt?
Yes, definitely. I think we need to kind of understand that this is going against society, right? Society and social media and everything is telling us buy, purchase, purchase, purchase. And what's happening is that we are going into this cycle of debt that actually might be detrimental. It is very detrimental. Debt is very detrimental to your overall financial health. And if you want to build wealth, you need to get rid of debt. And so what you do is that the first step you're going to do is, if you're currently in debt, what you want to do is you want to at least have $1,000 saved up, just enough that when an emergency happens, because let me tell you, the emergency will happen. It's not if, it's when. So when that emergency happens, you're not using credit card, you're not using debt to continue to pay for it. So what you're going to do is have $1,000, and then those $1,000 are going to be put into an account that you only use for emergency purposes. And then you're going to go back and pretty much start working on getting rid of debt. We use this thing in our office. We call it the snowball method, and you can look it up. You can YouTube and kind of how this is done. But the snowball method basically says that we're going to take our smallest debt, and we're just going to work on getting rid of that first small debt, and then we're just going to move as we go along towards our largest debt. It doesn't matter what interest rate you have. It doesn't matter if your interest is higher in one or the other. We're just looking at the balance, and that's how we're going to kind of start getting rid of the debt. That's how my husband and I got rid of $60,000 in debt, and it was various. We had $500 credit cards, and then we had a $20,000 student loan, right? So that's the way we did it. We just kind of started with the smallest first, and then we went through all the way to the biggest one.
Sense, because if you start with the biggest thing or a mortgage, then you don't get far. It's very discouraging. So if you can see the process or you start to get results, it kind of helps motivate you. Actually, that is something I did learn something tonight. And yeah, I think that makes sense. So start with the small thing, maybe a small credit card or, other lines of credit that you have. Karen, for people who are, you have children, I guess, if you have children and they have extracurricular activities, where do you draw the line as to what's a necessity for your child and what is not?
Well, so I think when it comes to your finances, you need to set some priorities. So you need to sit down, if you're married, if you have a spouse or a significant other that you share finances with, you need to sit down and have a conversation, an honest conversation of what are the things we're willing to compromise on. And remember, when we're talking about getting rid of debt, this is a short-term situation. This is not for the long term. Just like I shared with about my husband and I, we did this in 18 months. And after 18 months, basically what we were doing is we were living off of my salary. And then for 18 months, all of his salary was going to paying off the debt. After the 18 months, guess what happened? We had an extra salary all of a sudden that we just didn't. We were like, what do we do with this extra money? Well, now we're going to go ahead and start saving for emergency reserves, making sure that we start working on our financial goals. So you need to sit down as a family or as husband and wife or just spouses and just determine what are the things we're willing to compromise on a short-term basis so that we really get rid of debt and we start building wealth.
That's a really cool point, especially where you wake up, that debt's gone, and then now you have an extra salary for your life goals and your planning. What would you say is the most common mistake people do financially? Is it Starbucks? Is it going out to eat? Where is it? What is the biggest spending mistake or the fattest place you could attack or remove to help somebody's spending?
I think at the end of the day, there's this idea that, oh, if I just stop, buying coffee, if you love coffee and you enjoy that and it brings you happiness, very Marie Kondo, if it brings you joy, keep doing that. Just understand that if you're getting into debt because you are using your credit card to pay for that cup of coffee, then that's not really building wealth and it's not a good thing to do. So at the end of the day, there's not like anything that, I guess the biggest mistake that anyone can do with their finances is not pay attention to them, to have this idea that at the end of the month, you all of a sudden are like, do I have enough? Do I not have enough? And then you start getting into debt. The best thing you can do is be in control of your money, and you can do this. It can be scary, I promise you. When I those 18 months that my husband and I were working on this, it was tough. It was the toughest. Not only were we newlyweds, but we were getting rid of this debt, which was hard. It really wasn't an easy process. But after we did that, I always say, we don't have kids, so this is the hardest thing, but also the best thing we had ever done. Oh, my husband's actually, look, he's saying eating out or buying a Camaro, earning $12 an hour. That's so true. Buying cars, it's so easy to buy a car here. And that was, him before he met me. He bought a Camaro, a brand new Camaro, $30,000 or 30,000 plus car. And he was only earning $12 an hour. That's a huge mistake. Imagine all the wealth that you can build with $30,000 if you were to invest that in the market or buy a rental property. So I definitely think that the best thing you can do is to really look at your spending and not get into debt. Pay things in cash. You can do it, I promise.
We have a comment here in the conversation. I'm going ahead and go to add it here from Mr. Hanny. I'm not trying to discredit what you're trying to do, but as an entrepreneur, I started driving from Uber. Now I make about $5 million a year. Debt is a great way to build wealth. On my success, a great credit goes to American Express.
Well, I'm just going to say,
said anything about not having debt as far as small businesses. We leverage it all the time, but I'll let you address that. And thank you, Hanny, for your question. I love conversations, and I think all we could do is exchange ideas, and that's what I want for these meeting places to happen, and everybody kind of benefit and take away a little piece of knowledge for all of us to kind of contemplate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk about debt, what's happening is that we're putting it's a lot of risk. So we want to manage risk. And so in times like this, like the pandemic, the debt could actually bring you down. And it can actually cause you to lose everything, because if you're so leveraged that you don't have enough to even service that debt, then that's when the problems come in. So for the majority of people, and I would say, again, we're not talking absolutes here, but this is pretty much what, if you really believe in financial wellness and in financial freedom, we say try to stay out of debt. Because debt, like buying a Camaro that's a depreciable asset, is not going to build you wealth. It's only going to decrease your net worth. So you can use debt to buy homes, of course, but at the end of the day, we want you to build wealth, and the way you build wealth is by having more assets and less liabilities. Debt is going to always kind of be detrimental to your wealth.
Speak on behalf of Hanny, but maybe his point is there are certain ways to use debt to, attribute more assets or get something that will grow instead of depreciate. So I'm sure we're probably might be very close to agreeing on the same methodology. But what else would you say is something for people to do on like a rainy day plan, right? Is there how many, you read a lot of these different financial blogs as to you should have 2 months worth of salary or bills saved. These are true reserves. This is what would you say? Because there's rainy day, and let's say God forbid somebody loses their job, and then you want to make sure that you have enough money for X amount of time. Like, what would you say is a good safety net, and not to be free, of financial freedom, but to just a safety net?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of, once you get rid of the debt, what you want is to actually build a good emergency reserve. And a good emergency reserve is going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 months of living expenses that are going to be saved in an account where you don't touch it. This is not money that's to be invested. This is money that's not to be touched unless absolutely necessary. I am almost now, it really is almost a comfort level, because with the pandemic, a lot of people are saying now, I kind of want to have a year's worth of emergency reserves. So I would say anywhere from 3 to a year is good. It also depends on, is there a dual income household? So if one person loses the job, can the household survive on the other one? That's going to be a big factor. The other factor is the disparity between incomes. If one person makes a lot more and that person loses their job, then can the other person continue to sustain the household, or are they going to need some money to supplement that? So you're just going to want to try to figure out what is you're going to be most comfortable with. But I would say 6 months is really good. A year right now with everything going on, some people are even thinking a year, but that's really a comfort level of kind of where you would want to be.
And we are at our 30 minutes, and I just want to make a couple of points before we end for the night. Just like you hire an attorney for their expertise, or you go see a doctor because you're not feeling well, I truly believe it's important for people to check in. Maybe you don't need someone on a monthly basis, but perhaps every year, every couple of years, to check in to see, how am I doing? Have an annual financial physical. Because as much as that I thought I was savvy and things like this, I've learned so much over the couple of years on as far as business planning. And I do want to thank you, Karen, for being Mubarak Law's consultant and my friend. And I think we've made so much progress in the last few years. I also want my financial planners, if you're watching, Mahmoud Al-Awadi or Sami Kupti. She's not my personal financial planner. You are. So I appreciate, I think all everyone can do is surround themselves with people who they trust and who know what they're doing. And at the end of the day, you're still going to have to follow your own instinct. And that's a lot of times when I tell Karen, maybe I'll have a point like Hani, like, no, I'm going to do this. This is a process. And all we could do is kind of take some guidance and take it from there. So before we go, a couple announcements. Next week, we will have Besma Alawi, excuse me, our friend and activist from Jacksonville. We do a third Thursday of every month in Arabic. So إذا عندكم أي سؤال تفضلوا الخميس الجاي بدنا نجاوبكم بالعربي. ويعني احنا موجودين حابين ان نشتغل معاكم. So if anybody has questions, if you have suggestions about conversations or topics, that there's something you want to learn more about, please email me or email Jessica, and we will go ahead and try to find somebody who's a local expert or knowledgeable in this field. I've been in Orlando, 30 years, and so we know probably somebody in any field. So if you have any suggestions, please let us know. And of course, I will not end the show without asking you guys to please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and subscribe to our newsletter. Congratulations to our new citizens from Mubarak Law, and congratulations to my father on 69 beautiful years. Happy birthday. And Karen, thank you for being a good friend and somebody who we look to for advice. And thank you for joining us on Mubarak Law.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. This is a great information for the community, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. I'm happy to just send me an email or add me on Instagram.
There it is for those to go ahead and see her contact information. And we have a last comment. Hassan Yusuf, thank you very much for the information. Thank you, Amma, and thank you those who joined us today. See you later, Karen.